Welcome to episode number 129 of the Marine Layer podcast. We have our two Mariners storylines. We'll talk about Julio's offensive progression at the plate and Luke Raley coming into his own as a Mariner. We'll answer some of your guys' questions in our mailbag segment, and we'll close out the show with Speak Your Mind.
This show is brought to you by our friends over at Pagotch's Pub 85, where we love to hang out, and you guys will have a blast hanging out if you want to go watch a game or hang out with your friends. And if you head over during happy hour, you guys know you get great drink specials. It's a long happy hour. It's 2 to 6 p.m. from Monday through Friday. You can get a flurry of drinks, which include $3 domestic beers, $4 Manny's and Blue Moons, $4 Mac and Jacks, $4 Wells, and $4 house wine. So you want to have some great pizza or some great food, go hang out with your friends, go watch some games, head over there, Pagotch's Pub 85 in Kirkland. And if you want to stay on top of all of our stuff, which I hope you do, we hope you do, make sure to download these episodes, leave us a 5-star review on the audio platforms, rate and review, all that good stuff. Hit like on YouTube. You hit that subscribe button. We know you guys see it. It's sitting right in front of you if you're watching on YouTube. Leave a comment on the video as well. And then check us out on social media. We're on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, and YouTube Shorts at Marine Layer Pod.
Let's get it rolling.
The pitch from Acevedo. A drive deep to right field. Down the line. The Mariners win this game 2-1. The dream lives. They're going to the playoffs. 1-1 from Jansen. There you go. Left field. We got a tie ball game. Julio. Oh, baby, what a moment. Tie ball game is 7-7.
And we welcome you to this episode of the Marine Layer podcast, part of the Just Baseball Podcast Network, recording Thursday evening on May 16th. And Lyle and I are going to fight a minor league baseball team.
Let's just lay it all out. Fuck the Salt Lake Bees. Plain and simple.
Yeah. What organization are they part of, Lyle?
Let's see. Certainly one that's well run. Certainly one that has a great reputation across the league. Certainly one not prone for starting fights. Who could that be? Oh, sorry. My bad. Is it the Angels? Oh, it is.
Oh, funny. Yeah, sorry to the Salt Lake Bees, but we're squaring up. Like it's happening. In case you missed it and haven't been online in the last 24 hours, JP Crawford was probably an at-bat away from returning to the big leagues in AAA. He's probably his final at-bat on Wednesday of his rehab assignment, and he gets hit in the hand. And now we don't know when he's coming back. He's got a sore hand. It doesn't sound like he broke anything, but the Salt Lake Bees are now on our shit list for preventing us from seeing JP Crawford for at least another series or two.
I don't think it's that long.
Okay,
I think
series.
He didn't, here's the information we have as time of recording here on Thursday evening. He didn't fly to Baltimore here on Thursday. The Mariners said they're unsure when he's going to join the team. They are not concerned with it, they said. Daniel Kramer reported that, saying he seems to have avoided a serious injury. It's not going to land him on the IL again or anything for an extended period of time. However, he's just delayed a couple days, it sounds like. So he should be back in action soon enough. However, we were all expecting it to be here on Friday. It's not going to be on Friday.
Which position are you going to go after first in the fight? Are you going after the pitchers? I feel like that's easy prey.
Okay, here's low-key the problem with actually getting in a fight with the Salt Lake Bees. I kind of have an old friend that's on the Salt Lake Bees, so I'm going to have to stay away from him and maybe fight everybody else. Yeah, who hit him again? It was Adam Kolarek, who's a career, who's had a long big league career as a reliever and now is in AAA. Maybe him.
I'm going to pick out the smallest guy because it's probably the one I match up with the most.
Yeah.
When you look at me and my physical profile, don't exactly have, let's say, like a big league body. We'll say that. I'm more of a Dustin Pedroia. Let's see, like a shorter version of Brian Anderson, I would say. It's probably my comp. So to say that I would actually succeed in any sort of fight with a big league athlete might be tough.
Are you telling me I have a big league body?
More than I do? There are big leaguers smaller than you?
Well, how nice of you, Tej. It's nice of you to say. Maybe how far can my athleticism go? Could I beat a big leaguer in a race? That's a good question. Probably not.
You're not that fast.
I'm not like crazy fast. I ran an okay 60 time in high school, but could I
how fast are you now?
I would imagine it's not that different. I think my 60 time in high school, again, it was nothing crazy. It was like 7.2, I want to say. But I don't know, like
yeah.
a bullpen arm? I don't know. Maybe
I don't even know how, because I probably like bulked up a little, maybe not. Maybe, and like I know you've probably bulked up a little bit more than I have. My weight really doesn't fluctuate that much, so but I don't run anymore, so I'm probably just slow. So I'm just thinking of like the physical advantages I would have on anyone on the Salt Lake Bees. I mean, unless we get to the manager, it's like I'm not liking my chances. But we need to try anyway because we're going to stand up for JP Crawford.
Yes, we are. I'm just going to avoid my old friend who you'll remember the name. His name's Bryce Teodosio. He played at Clemson. He was in the Cape League when we were in the Cape League with the team I was with. And he's big. So I'm not going after him. He's big, he's strong, he's fast, and he's a really good athlete. So not him. Like you said, maybe we'll go after the pitchers or the manager, like we said, because everything can always go back to the manager, right? Just like how the Jesse Winker fight was all Phil Nevin's fault, and that's actually facts.
Well, you're leaving out number one, Anthony Rendon.
Oh, Anthony Rendon. Would he even step out of the dugout, or would he not be in the mood that day?
I feel like he'd be in the mood to fight. The funny thing is, if we wait long enough, we would get Anthony Rendon in Salt Lake.
No, we're not. You think he's getting back on the field this year? That guy doesn't want to be playing baseball.
Eventually, though, when he has to do a rehab assignment, that's where he'll be.
Again, you're under the assumption he wants to keep playing baseball this year.
Let's give him incentive. And this isn't baseball. You might actually like swinging at guys. You sure liked sucker punching during a fight.
Well, that's true. Anyway, let's hope JP Crawford gets back here in the next couple days. I would think that he would. The reports seem to be okay. However, it was a scary, scary sight when everybody saw that video on Twitter on Wednesday night of him getting hit in the hand with that ball. Not good.
Let's get into our Mariners storylines, and let's start off with something that could be scarier if we continue to see progression from one Julio Rodriguez at the plate. There's some definitive truths out there of what Julio Rodriguez has done at the plate this season. It's not been good enough so far. The power has been non-existent. But I really think that we have seen some tangible differences from him at the plate, and those off-season things that he was working on, we're starting to see the progress here in May.
Yeah, we are. And we're going to look at a really small sample here. But first off, I think it's fair to say when that ball left the yard on Mother's Day, you could feel just a sigh of relief throughout the whole fan base, the whole region. It's like, oh, there we go, Julio. Like, this can be the turning point. He finally leaves the yard. It just felt like, did it not feel like such a weight lifted off everybody's shoulders to see him leave the yard, including his, first and foremost?
Yeah, it felt like a weight off of, like, it's gotten to the point where if a home run leaves and you don't see who hit it, I mean, in past seasons, we would assume Julio would have a pretty good chance, but not this season. So, like, he's one of the few guys on the team that can hit a ball like that over that fence with that kind of authority. So just like, we just want to see him get to the point where he's doing that more and more and more often. And I think in May, he is starting to unlock some things. It's not perfect, but he's starting to look at least a little bit more like the Julio Rodriguez we were expecting to see. And if he tweaks a couple more things, I think we have a chance to see the best version of him. Do you know what's amazing? You know, you look at the raw numbers. He's got a 113 WRC plus this month, which is good. It's not ceiling level Julio offensive production, but it's better than what he has been doing. But there's some other things too that are actually remarkably good about what he's doing this month. His average exit velocity this month is 96 miles an hour. That's elite, plus in average exit velocity. He's doing that while not swinging and missing quite as much. That's a pretty dangerous combination to have as a hitter. And I'm just thinking back to the conversation we had preseason where we're sitting here on our preseason predictions episode. It's like, okay, Julio over steals except for me. Julio over home runs. He might hit 40. He's probably not hitting 40 at this point, but there were reasons we thought he would hit 40 home runs. We thought he was going to swing and miss less, swing at more pitches in the strike zone, and elevate a lot more while continuing to hit the ball just as hard. We're starting to see some of that this month, and that could mean big trouble as he starts elevating the baseball more.
Even in his last 5 games, which small sample, but in 3 of his last 4 contests, let's go there. 7 for his last 15, 2 extra base hits. It's a double and a home run. That double almost left the yard. That was on Sunday too. But then in his last 5 games, he's only struck out 3 times, 20 plate appearances, 3 strikeouts. Small sample. We need to see more of it, but we're starting to see things round into form a little bit more. It's not all going to happen overnight. It's not all going to happen with the snap of a fingers, but it certainly felt like Sunday has a chance to be a massive turning point. And the games following, while there hasn't been additional power that we've seen in game yet, he's still racking up multi-hit outings, and you're seeing much, much better at bats.
Julio's a 100th percentile level hitter. Like, he is the 100th percentile of your average big league player at the plate. Like, that's the kind of offensive upside he has. But I want to just give some context for what the league offense is this year. When you're looking at Julio's slash line and you're like, oh, Julio's, even in a good month, Lyle, with a 113 WRC plus, you know his slugging percentage? 365.
To say it's not high.
A 113 WRC plus slugging percentage is 365. 13% better than league average is the number. And I'm like, that cannot be right. That physically cannot be right that the offense is this far down. But the league slash this year is 239, 312, 385.
I think the mounds are getting moved back here in the next 5 years.
Something's got to change. Even if like a 160 WRC plus this year is like an 870, 880.
Right.
So Julio could have the outlier best season of his year by WRC plus, and we'd sit there and be like, man, I feel like he's got 1,000 in there somewhere.
Mm-hmm. Well, not if the league keeps trending like this in terms of pitchers, which again, I don't know what the solution is. I don't know if it's bringing back the juice baseballs. Bringing back the juice baseballs doesn't.
Please do it. Please do it.
But, okay, so here's the only thing about that. Bringing back the juice baseballs does not help hitters make contact. It's just when you make contact, it'll travel further. So if it's an issue of swing and miss and pitchers just overpowering hitters, isn't the only solution to move the mound back? I don't know what else you do.
But Mr. Lyle Goldstein, can I entice you in a 60-homer Julio Rodriguez season?
Yes, you can.
Oh, well.
But again, juice baseballs don't help hitters make contact. It's a swing and miss issue in baseball right now. Pitchers are way ahead of hitters right now because the stuff is as good as it's ever been.
Well, I know the suggestion from a lot of people out there is that they should just bunt more. I think that would bring back the contact era. But yeah, like maybe I like, how far would it have to go for them to actually move the mound back? Like, I don't know. I wouldn't. So I think the product would have to get to the point where it's unwatchable. I think you and I both don't think the product right now is unwatchable.
No, it's not.
Like, offense is down, but unwatchable, no. I think for a change that drastic to be made, the product would have to be just so obscenely terrible. Like, we're talking peak 1960s dead ball for them to do something about this, which we're not at.
Yeah, we're not. And maybe that's a conversation for down the road. But if you're talking about Julio just as a whole and starting to turn things around, again, small sample, he still needs to barrel it up a little bit more than he's doing because he's still hitting the ball hard, but the launch angle's not there. The barrels aren't there because he's not elevating the baseball enough yet. He's hitting the ball hard, no elevation. If you look at his expected slug numbers, his barrel percentage, again, his launch angle percentage, like sweet spot, and the differences from his first couple of years, even last year to right now, it's a pretty drastic difference. That's the whole key. He has got to start elevating the baseball. And everybody knows that. Elevating the baseball, and he's got to take advantage of fastballs because he's still not doing enough of that yet. Those are the keys. He starts doing that, you're going to see more peak form Julio.
And there's been some improvements that would lead us to suggest that some of that is coming. Again, he's just flat out in the zone and out of the zone. He's swinging and missing less, which is it's a good sign. And it's near, I would guess, lows of his career, even though it's a small sample within a month. But I mean, everything across the board in whiff, in zone whiff, barrel percentage, hard hit percentage, quality of contact, his fly ball rate went up 50% from April to May. That's good. 50%. It's not going to keep going up 50%, but it's 21% in April. It's 32.5% in May. So yeah, like, it's coming at some point. And he's also walking because he was not walking at all in April, which is a problem. And we'll talk about that with our next storyline too, with our next candidate here. But when you're not walking at all, it is really hard to have offensive success because pitchers know you're eventually going to chase something out of the strike zone, which Julio has done this year, but done a lot less recently. There's another problem with Julio. I mean, righties are just eating him alive. They've been eating him alive this entire season. He's not a platoon bat, but he's certainly hitting like a platoon bat this season. He's got a 149 WRC plus against lefties and a 73 WRC plus against righties. Just like barely a big league caliber bat right now against right-handed pitching.
Yeah, and there's another item on the checkbox that's going to have to get solved. You can't be a platoon bat making the money that he's making, being as important to the team as he is. And that hasn't been a problem in years past. That he hasn't had drastic splits like that in years past. So you would think that'll stabilize, but you're right. That's not a good sign through the first 6 weeks. And again, his numbers wouldn't be that bad against right-handed pitching if he was getting on top of fastballs. But when right-handers start to get ahead of the count against Julio, that's when he starts to see the big breaking balls away, and we know he chases those sliders low and away. He starts to see the splitters and the changeups in the dirt, and it gets him. Through the first 6 weeks, it's gotten the best of him a little bit. And that's going to it's all encompassing of what's going to have to turn around for Julio here. Look, it's great that he's a little more balanced, it seems, these days in the box, because we've heard Ryan Divish talk about that was part of the problem, that he was off balance. He didn't seem like he was on time with a lot of things. But yes, you can't be a platoon bat if you're Julio Rodriguez. You're going to have to start turning it around. I'm sure he's going to soon enough, but you want to see less of those breaking balls low and away. You got to take advantage of the heaters.
Mm-hmm. And there's one stat, if there's a stat that really jumped out to me, and it certainly plays into exactly what we've been talking about with him being on time. I don't think there's anything that defines being on time more than your ability to pull the baseball, because that's where you do the most damage. Julio's been pretty good in his career at pulling line drives, pulling them into the corner, pulling them into the left center gap, or just hitting it hard through the left side of the infield. He's doing that at half the rate he's done that in his career right now. Half. Which is, it's almost like an outlier low number of his ability to pull the baseball, and that's a big reason why his power's down. Every single hitter on Earth's best power's to the pull side, and frankly, he's just not doing it. So it's something he's going to have to do. There's another incredibly puzzling thing that popped up this week that was, I think, brought to my attention, and I'm sure you saw this too, in terms of what Julio's done at the plate, but also on the base paths, just sort of the over aggressiveness at times. Julio right now is a 98th percentile runner in sprint speed, incredibly fast, in the top 2% of baseball in terms of being fast. He is 14th percentile in base running run value. The outs he's created on the bases, getting himself out, has been awful.
Mm-hmm. And that's something that should be easily fixable. And just plain and simple shouldn't be happening. When he got picked off to end the game against the Cubs, when he came in as a pinch runner, to a couple of the plays this past week. The offensive woes are one thing. I'm not saying anybody should be thrilled about the offensive woes, but it does happen to even the best of hitters. Base running woes, those are just self-inflicted. There's nothing to look at with the data or the underlying numbers with base running woes. He's just got to be more careful on the base paths. It's that simple. You can't be getting picked off like that.
And you get 600-700 opportunities at the plate to correct things you mess up. You don't get those opportunities on the base paths. No, you get a small fraction of those. And when you do mess up on the base paths, it gets amplified a whole lot more than just swinging and missing at a pitch out of the zone. So, it's really been a complicated season so far for Julio Rodriguez. It's been disappointing, certainly, because the Mariners need him to be the best player, and more likely than not, far and away the best player on this team, for them to reach their absolute potential, because that's the kind of talent he has. But then again, for the third consecutive season, Julio comes out of the gate slow, and we're seeing new issues pop up that people are not used to seeing with him, with the lack of power and the sloppiness on the base paths and the chasing and things you would expect a third-year big leaguer and a third-year superstar to fix. And now as we go throughout the month of May, we're going to the Mariners are going to the East Coast. They'll be in Baltimore when this episode comes out on Friday. Some good hitters environments against not great pitching staffs, with the weather warming up as well. this is the time where we expect Julio Rodriguez to turn the corner, because in reality, if you just want to think of it in the simplistic terms, I mean, Julio is 2 power-sapped weeks away from entering June 1st with 2 home runs. How are the Mariners supposed to be good in that? With that, how are you supposed to make up that production?
You can't. And imagine where the Mariners would be right now if Julio was playing like prime Julio. The Mariners are in first place. The pitching rotation has been unbelievable, as we've talked about countless times, as everybody has. Where would the Mariners be right now if Julio had just gotten off to a hot start and played like prime Julio?
They'd have the record that looked like the Royals record entering the series. Like, they would be significantly better, and they'd have a bigger lead on first place. It is really hard for the great teams to be great without their best players being great. It is like almost impossible. And it's like, and people could, this would be the opportunity for people to come out and say, well, Jerry should have just added more in the offseason, so not all the pressure's on Julio. No, the pressure's on Julio is because he's supposed to be good, and he's being paid to be that good, right? And no executive, no manager can anticipate the elite production in their lineup not being so. Like, you just expect that. It should be a given that Aaron Judge is going to be great. It should be a given that Kyle Tucker is going to be great. It should be a given that pick your superstar Bobby Witt's going to be amazing. It should be expected at that point. So when the lack of production then comes along, everyone's sort of left scrambling.
The Braves expected Ronald Acuna to be Ronald Acuna. He's not doing it right now. It's the same thing. You can't prepare for that. You can argue, especially after the year he had last year. I'm not saying I'd put him over Shohei, but you can argue Ronald Acuna was the best player in baseball, or is. You cannot prepare, despite the Braves having a much deeper lineup with a bunch of superstar bats. Doesn't matter. You cannot prepare for the best player on your team and arguably one of the best players in the entire league to come out like this. You just can't prepare for that. And there's no player you can add that can neutralize that. It just doesn't work.
Like, how good are the Dodgers right now if Shohei is putting up Julio slash?
They're probably it's probably similar to the Mariners. They're probably still in first place because that's another loaded lineup, but they don't look like the Dodgers that they're playing like right now. It's not the offense that they're playing like right now, because that's the best hitter in baseball that's not hitting like the best hitter in baseball.
Right. It's hard to make up. Right. So, eventually the corner has been, it looks like it's being turned for Julio Rodriguez. Now it's time to see it ramped up.
Right. All right. Second storyline here. Luke Raley. Welcome to the party. Welcome to the freaking party, Luke Raley. That's all I can say. This dude was essentially in the doghouse the first couple weeks of the season. You barely saw him in the lineup. Now he's hitting like the best. Now he's hitting like the best hitter in the Mariners lineup over the last couple weeks.
Injuries aren't a good thing, right? I think all of us would rather see all the Mariners' best players healthy on the roster at the same time. But Luke Raley's playing time with a healthy Mariners roster probably doesn't pop up. Like, I think if everyone had just stayed healthy on this roster, we wouldn't be sitting here talking about Luke Raley right now. Plain and simple. The playing time had to be the injuries probably needed to happen to see the playing time for Luke Raley. As crummy as that is to say, for the injury factor of Dom Canzone, it was great to get him back on Wednesday, but Luke Raley's not playing as much without that. And he doesn't get the opportunity to come into a new organization and get comfortable, which I think a lot of people need to remember, that Luke Raley essentially gets traded across the country from Tampa, Florida to Seattle, Washington to, oh, by the way, here you go. Let's you're going to be part of a platoon. You're not going to be playing full time. You're going to need to and get comfortable on the fly, by the way. And that's a lot to take in. It's a lot to take in with the surroundings, with his commute to work, with just familiarity of the area overall. It's a lot to take in. So the first month can be sort of overwhelming, but as soon as he gets inserted into the lineup and he gets regular playing time, I mark his regular playing time counter starting on April 21st. Since that moment, he has a 165 WRC plus, and that's amazing to see for Luke Raley, and gives them an even more valuable option to have now to stash on their roster, having a big league hitter who has now found his groove at the plate while probably not playing in a full-time role once everyone gets healthy.
Luke Raley has a 117 WRC plus for the year. Imagine saying that 2-3 weeks ago. He was barely playing. He wasn't putting together good at bats. It was all kind of a mess. And nobody could really understand why he wasn't getting the necessary time. Part of it was probably because Haniger and Canzone were off to such great starts. But when Luke Raley gets going, look at what he does for the offense. We keep talking about Jorge Polanco and Mitch Garver. Those are the two most important bats, sans Julio Rodriguez, on paper for this team. Luke Raley was an 824 OPS guy last year. 824. In the first half, Luke Raley was destroying the ball for the Rays. I know he had a little bit of a down second half, but he was crushing the ball in the first half, like over a 900 OPS crushing the ball. That's a valuable bat. Luke Raley was not brought in here just to be a bench guy. Luke Raley was brought in here to be an impact bat. Now we're seeing Luke Raley be an impact bat. And if you want to look at his last 15 games, he's got a 1078 OPS in that time. He's hitting the ball hard. He's hitting the ball out of the yard. And he looks just flat out locked in.
We love to see it. We do love to see it. Now, is it sustainable?
Some of the Savant numbers still aren't great. I do wonder how much of that is because he got off to the slow start.
Mm-hmm.
The fact he's basically not walking at all is not a great sign. The strikeouts we may have to live with because he's always kind of been a strikeout guy. They acquired him knowing that. However, him walking just over 3% of the time, that's got to come up a little bit.
Yeah, it's going to come up, and there needs to be, like, so he's hitting right now, but eventually, like, things ebb and flow. And the problem with a profile like this, like, if you're hitting, it's great because the power will be there. And as we've seen this weekend, him swatting home runs over the fence, it's all great. But if he's not, say, having enough damage swings, he's hitting into some bad luck. There's not many other peripherals if he's not putting bat to ball and crushing bat to ball, which even, again, the best hitters can't do every single time. There's not much else being added. So that's why I think it's actually good on his part that he's made himself so valuable at so many different spots. He's played all three outfield positions this season. He's now played first base. He's actually plus in both the corner outfields and at first base on DRS. He's been plus this year, which is good to see. Outs above average has him at -1. You can live with -1. That's not the end of the world. And as Scott Service said, Luke Raley kind of looks awkward doing every single thing he does, but he makes it happen and it works. So you just live with it. So it's good that he has showcased the versatility we sort of anticipated coming into the season, that he can play the three outfield spots. He can play first base. And again, if he can just walk a little bit, give Scott Service a reason to keep you in the lineup, even if you're not hitting home runs, right? Think of a guy like Dylan Moore. So Demo plays a lot of positions. Look at me gassing up Demo for you. Who could have thought?
We absolutely love to see it.
So Demo plays a lot of positions. He strikes out a lot, and he hits home runs. But what else does Dylan Moore do, Lyle? He walks. Mm-hmm. He walks. You can also play the left side of the infield, which really helps. But what keeps him on the big league roster is that I was just naming off those valuable skills that he can bring. If Luke Raley doesn't walk, it's, again, just harder if he's not hot hitting the baseball.
But what if he's actually turning a corner here?
It could be. In this month, he's walking 9% of the time, which is nice. It's good. We love our sample sizes, so we'd probably like to see a larger sample than that. But it's been good. And even if we shrink it or expand it just a tiny bit to when I like I said, April 21st, I think is when he really started playing regularly. His walk rate since then's 5%, which you'd probably want to see that up at like 7 to 8%. Like just get up to 7 or 8. That would be good. But his strikeout rate you could live with at that point. It's 24.6%. Mm-hmm. You could totally live with that. That's a good mark for this current team right now.
Mm-hmm. And given Raley's power profile, you'll totally live with 24%. 24%'s about league average, maybe slightly above. It's perfectly fine. And I think for what he's doing right now, also with Canzone back, I'd be playing Raley just about every day at this point. I think this is where you can finally transition Mitch Haniger to get him off his feet a little bit more. I don't think anybody thought Mitch was going to be playing this much when he was acquired. Now that Raley's hitting, now that Canzone's back, I think it's time for Mitch to evolve into the role that we kind of thought he was going to be in. Play a couple times a week against lefties, serves as a very good bench bat, but otherwise, like, that's his role, because that's how you can best utilize Mitch Haniger and make sure he doesn't get injured. Where Luke Raley's hitting like this, again, you can make an argument that Luke Raley could be the second most valuable bat in the lineup by the end of the year behind Julio. We've talked about Garver. We've talked about Polanco. I still think it's those two. But if he keeps hitting like this is a guy that's that good of a bat.
Really?
Well, again, you're talking about a 130 WRC plus guy last year. Is that crazy? What was Polanco? What was Garver? Garver was a little bit higher. Garver was 138, I believe. Raley was 130.
Can Raley have a 130 playing every day against left-handers too?
You know, super small sample, but he's actually hit against lefties so far.
He has. The problem is, I don't think the Mariners, it'll ever get to that point though, where he's playing against lefties consistently. I just don't think so. It doesn't seem like that's going to be the strategy of the Mariners. That's not how this roster is built. And if you're going to have a lefty outfielder playing against lefties, it's going to be Canzone.
Probably.
You have another, once everyone's healthy, you have another corner outfield right-handed bat who would hit instead of Luke Raley. It would be Dylan Moore.
Yeah. Okay, fine. Maybe Raley's not going to play a ton against lefties, but if there's a right-hander on the mound, it should be Raley every day at this point going forward. Sure. Unless something drastic happens. Like with Canzone back, if you're going to play him against lefties, this is where the platoon needs to start between Raley and Haniger. Get Mitch playing against lefties. Let Raley hit all the righties. That feels. I know I'm not in the front office. I know I'm not on the coaching staff or either of us for that matter. But that feels about as well. You can always call. Everybody has their price. Every man has his price. However, that seems about as seamless of a decision as you can make. What does Haniger do best? He hits lefties. What does Raley do best? He hits righties. Raley's scorching hot right now. Everybody's talked about making sure Haniger can play a full year healthy. I think it's time to just transition to that.
And even if the Mariners want to keep playing Mitch Haniger, you could make the same case for Mitch Garver at DH. Even though, again, you and I think Garver is going to turn it around, but say Garver still is only good at hitting lefties this year, and Raley's only good at hitting righties, and that's your DH right there. So there's options. The options, I think, at the end of the day, is what Jerry Dipoto and Scott Service want.
Yeah,
and Luke Raley leaves the option out there.
Yeah, he does. And as we know, Garver's been hitting better the last couple weeks, too. He seems like he might be turning a corner here. So.
We'll have to see. I'm very excited. Obviously, we're excited for summer for obvious reasons. But besides just the warm weather, the sunshine, and, more baseball, I think the Mariners offense coming along in the summer months will make it even that much better. So, and Luke Raley's a huge part of that. Let's get to our mailbag questions, Lyle. It's been a little while since we've done a mailbag, but I'm excited to dive back into it. Just be on the lookout, guys. If you didn't get a chance to get your question in, we try and do a mailbag once a month. We'll put polls out on Twitter. We'll put them out on Instagram. We'll put them out on YouTube as well. Keep your eyes peeled. It'll be our Instagram story. We'll tweet it out. We'll post it on YouTube, not as a YouTube video, as a YouTube post. Leave us a question. And you leave enough questions, we'll get to your question and we'll answer it in one of these mailbags. Always looking forward to answering some of these questions. So first mailbag question, Lyle, comes from Eric Fitch on Instagram. And his question is, who do you see being the next member of the Mariners Hall of Fame? Eric's guest is Rick Riz.
So this is going to happen eventually, right? I don't know when. I don't know the exact time. There is no way, when it's all said and done, Rick Riz is not a Mariners Hall of Famer. There's no way.
Right. Yeah, Riz is going to be in there. It's between Rick and Kyle Seager for who's next. Flip a coin.
Do you flip a coin? Here's why I say that. If the Mariners wanted to put Kyle Seager into the Mariners Hall of Fame, is he showing up? Is he accepting the award? I honestly don't know at this point.
I can't confirm that. I think I have the same reservations you two of that. But since he is retired, you could make the case that it would be easier for, at least on the Mariners side, to organize.
Organize, yes. But the big
organized to complete. Usually with the Hall of Fame, you do want the person to be there, and not to try and draw out conspiracies, but when Felix had his Hall of Fame inductment last year, one very notable Mariner did not make an appearance in person and did not make an appearance in the video saluting King Felix. It was Kyle Seager. So,
and those guys were attached at the hip forever. They played together for such a long time. They were teammates they were teammates when they were in the Cano era. They were teammates through 2016.
They were teammates pre-Cano.
Well, so I was going to say, they were teammates pre-Cano. They were teammates in the Cano Cruz era when they were in a little bit of a contention window, even though they never made the playoffs. And they were teammates in 2019, even when the rebuild was starting. Seager was there all the way through 21. Those guys were together a long time. And to see that Kyle Seager couldn't even take 15 seconds to record a video saying, Felix, congrats on the award, buddy. I'm happy for you. You deserve it all. Wish I could be there, and send it over a text or email to somebody with the Mariners. It would have taken like less than 5 minutes out of his day, but he didn't do it. I'm thinking, if he can't even send a 15-second video, is he showing up coming from North Carolina to Seattle for a ceremony? I think this may be a few years away for Kyle Seager. I think he's still got to, assuming he still has his frustrations with the organization, I think he's still got to give himself a couple years to simmer down a bit, and then maybe he'll be more open to it. Which is why I would think if it's going to be between those two, I would say it's Rick Riz first.
I was thinking if they were going to announce Riz, they would probably wait until the offseason to announce he's being inducted so they can set the Hall of Fame announcement, right, during the season. That's not something they would announce today and say, oh, by the way, in the middle of August, Rick Riz is getting inducted into the Mariners Hall of Fame.
Right. That's probably right. But is Kyle Seager getting inducted next summer with an announcement this winter? I don't think so.
Well, Kyle Seager, he should, under a logical, normal circumstance, he should. It would make sense. It would match up with the timeline of retirement from the big leagues. Felix retired, we say Felix retired in 20, give or take, and he got inducted in 23. Ichiro retired in 19, got inducted in 22, right? 22? Got that year right?
That sounds right.
Yeah, so then Kyle Seager retiring after 21 could, in theory, the 3-year window would line up to get inducted this August. But yeah, since it hasn't been announced, it's not happening. So
right.
It's a really interesting thing to think about. So I'd say, odds-on favorite is Rick Riz. I mean, Rick Riz right now should be a Mariners Hall of Famer, but it'll happen eventually.
Right. I would agree. Okay. Second question. This is from David Woody on Instagram. He says, how many players will we have in the All-Star game? Now, we're going to phrase this question as if it's right now. For how the teams performed to this point, if the All-Star game was today, who's in it?
So I'd say the Mariners have 3 All-Stars. It'd be really hard to leave Andres Munoz out right now for how he's pitching, both lengthwise and effectiveness. Pick a starting pitcher. Logan Gilbert has been the best starting pitcher on the Mariners so far this season, so I'm giving him the nod. And then Josh Rojas right now is a Major League All-Star for how he has hit through the first month and a half.
I agree with all that. Those guys are on my list. I had Bryce Miller down too. I don't know how many Mariners arms from one rotation will get in, but when Bryce Miller's putting up the ERA and the numbers that he's putting up right now, he should be in very strong consideration, that's for sure. And even Cal Raleigh, I'm not saying he's the favorite, but he shouldn't be that far off. He's got a real chance right now too. What?
No, he shouldn't.
Yeah. So those are the guys that would be on my list as of right now. Now, if you ask us this question in a month, will Julio be on this list? We sure hope so. Will other guys have a chance? Will George Kirby or Luis Castillo have a much, much lower ERA and numbers that more reflect who they are as pitchers? Yeah, good chance. And those guys were in the All-Star game last year. They certainly have a chance to do it again. But as of right now, yeah, I'm with you. I would say the 3 guys would be Rojas, Logan, and Andres Munoz.
And in Julio's case, he's not going to have the hometown extra oomph to get in this year.
No.
A big part of the reason, a big reason he was in the game last year is because he was in Seattle. He's not going to get the benefit of the doubt in Texas.
Mm-hmm.
So he's going to have to he's going to have to do this. He's going to have to play significantly better over the next 2 months to earn himself an all-star spot, because otherwise he's not an all-star right now.
Right.
Our third question is from Nate on Instagram. Good running into you, Nate, this weekend at the ballpark. It was great running into you and your friends. He's asking, I want Lyle and TJ's most and least favorite baseball savant number right now.
I'm going to give Nate a little bit more of a pop than that. This dude, certified ball knower. We sat with him. We sat with a whole group of guys that are very super good dudes, follow the podcast, Nate included. Nate hopped on for some social media content, so shout out to him. And he was just happy to really get into the nitty gritty of talking baseball, which we love, as we know. And he sends us this question. Yeah, favorite and least favorite baseball savant numbers right now, who Nate also talked about being a big baseball savant guy. So I would say my favorite, it's hard to just pick one. I really do like run value, because it shows when a pitcher and a hitter is succeeding or not succeeding against certain pitches. And it shows here's what they thrive at, here's what they don't thrive at, with every different offering that comes their way or is thrown out of their hand. I think that's super interesting. Something that until a few years ago, we never would have known. We never would have known until a couple years ago that Luis Castillo's changeup, which out of the eye always looked like the best pitch, isn't as much of a thing anymore. Now it's that fastball. Baseball savants helped us realize that a lot over the last couple of years, which if we didn't have that information, we may not definitively know that. I would say run value's there. And then I do like the hard hit numbers with either hard hit rate or barrel rate, just to show that do guys really square up the ball? Or are you somebody like Isaac Paredes, who their profile doesn't make a lot of sense, where you hit some home runs, but you probably thrive from a short left field at Tropicana Field, and in other ballparks maybe wouldn't thrive as much. So I like those three numbers a lot. I think they tell you a lot about a player and who they are. Least favorite, I don't have a lot of least favorites on Baseball Savant. Just to pick one, I went with arm value, because you know what somebody's arm strength is. I don't exactly know how to quantify arm value. I'm sure it has to do with throwing runners out and the accuracy of your throws, but it's not a huge sample size you get with that stuff. You don't get that many opportunities to throw out runners. So not that arm value is a bad stat, but if I had to pick one, that's what I went with.
So my favorite, Nate, thanks again for the question. I mean, this is a really good and really thoughtful question that is literally right up Lyle and I's alley. And Nate, I know yours is too. The quote from Nate when we asked him was like, "Hey, do you want to do some social media content? You're going to guess some players in Mariners history." And Lyle, was it you who was like, "So Nate, like, let's just ask, are you a ball knower?" And he's like, "Oh, I got like 5 Baseball Savant tabs up right now." We're like, "Oh yeah, you're perfect for this."
Yeah,
perfect. So my favorite stat, I like the catching metrics. I think they're really unique, and I don't think any other site quantifies catching quite like Baseball Savant does. You have framing runs on other sites, but you don't have the other outlets doing like blocks above average, caught stealing above average, framing, and pop time all in one catching metric. So because of the uniqueness of that, I think like it's the best way to quantify catchers. So that's why it earns my spot. I do love all the hard hit stuff, but we didn't need to double up on that one. My least favorite is a stat I've never once used and probably won't. Ex-Wobacon. I mean, it literally looks like I'm just saying ex-wo bacon. I think people like saying it that way. It's essentially quality of contact ex-woba, but on contact alone. I'm sitting here thinking I like the aspect of ex-woba that factors in the fact you don't make enough contact, because if you strike out too much, it's like, yeah, your quality contact should be good, but you still strike out a lot. So it kind of lowers your value a little bit. And I think ex-Wobacon, could you imagine like Adam Dunn, like looking at the difference of those is like, oh yeah, his ex-Wobacon's great. And it's like, well, I still know he strikes out 35% of the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. I think that's a good answer.
I think this eventually, Lyle, just boils down to which stats do we use the most and which stats do we never use.
Right.
Yeah.
Like WRC Plus is not a savant stat, which I would say that is both of our favorite stats. I would say, like, my 3 favorite stats, I think somebody asked us this once, and I picked from each different kind of category. I think I said WRC Plus, I said WAR, and I said outs above average, just so you have like all encompassing. You have offense and then you have defense. But yeah, WRC Plus isn't on Baseball Savant. So
right.
So yeah,
they should have. They don't have WRC plus, but they do have their overall like batting run value. That's their offensive stat.
Right. And maybe in time that becomes more relevant. But right now, it's probably taking a backseat to some of the other stuff on Savant, which is fine. If you don't use Baseball Savant, I think you're missing out because there is so much knowledge that you can gain from being on that website. Fourth question. This is on YouTube. It comes from @the_Connor_Joe_trade. He says, when JP comes back, do you think Luis Urias will be made available for a Dipoto trash to treasure minor league arm?
So my take on this is that I feel like that would be a little bit of an overpay because I think Luis Urias right now is like a certified big leaguer on this. So like he has a defined role on this roster that he plays, and then he's played well this season. And trading him for, as described, to like a sleeper, a diamond in the rough minor league arm to perform well on the Mariners. Wouldn't that not be an overpay for a prospect? Like I think that would be. So I just don't really see Urias being the one to be offered up for a trade like that.
I agree. I think Urias has been a very, very much contributing piece of this team this year. And he's got his strengths too. First off, I think his defense has taken some real strides. We've talked about that. I think it's been much better than people anticipated it was going to be. And he's hitting lefties. I know with the injuries, he's been forced to play against righties more, which is unfortunate because it's really not his strength, and his splits certainly tell that story. He's OPSing well over 800 against lefties this year. And now with JP on the verge of coming back, you would think that Urias is going to start to play in his role much more. Just like how we're saying Mitch Haniger should transition to just hitting against lefties, Luis Urias needs to go back to the role he was in, where he's just hitting against lefties once everybody's healthy. And when he's doing that, he is very much a contributing piece to this team.
I agree. I don't really know if there's a guy on the big league roster you would trade for something like that. It would probably be a prospect for prospect swap, if we're going to be honest. Because either the big leaguer wouldn't have enough value or they'd have too much value. I don't know if there's any of those real tweeners that are an obvious trade candidate.
Right. In conclusion, I don't think Luis Urias is going anywhere.
No.
Shout out, by the way. I tweeted this out for fun because it's an off day and I wanted to find something fun to tweet out. Bet you a lot of you guys did not know this. The guy on the Mariners with the second most Instagram followers, Luis Urias. Second. I am going to bet that was not your first guess before I said that. But it's him.
Is that like, I would guess that's WBC related?
It's got to be.
He played on Team Mexico and he had a dramatic home run and
off of Roki Sasaki too.
Right, yeah. So maybe a lot of the Japanese fans were like, "Oh, this guy's good."
Right. Or just the fact it was off such a big household name like Roki Sasaki. So, yeah, I would guess the WBC played a factor into that, but yeah, just kind of an interesting thing.
Doesn't Lars Nootbaar now have over 1 million Instagram followers?
Right.
Yeah. Right. Like Lars Nootbaar.
Yeah.
Guys.
Who's now very good friends with Shohei Ohtani. That probably helped.
Yeah, that probably helps. Yeah.
All right, why don't you tee up the next question for us?
The next one is on Instagram from Kyle Alford 32. The question is just for Lyle Goldstein. If the Astros, Lyle, are still struggling near the deadline, should the M's aggressively pursue Kyle Tucker?
Woo! Hell yes. We talked about this at length last week. So I am thrilled to see, and I want to shout out Kyle for the question, but I want to shout out everybody that sent in questions along this line. Because I got to tell you, we sent out the invitation to send in questions for this mailbag, and we got an overwhelming amount of response saying, how do the Mariners trade for Kyle Tucker? You know what that means? We're starting a fucking movement here on this podcast. Hell yeah, we're starting a movement. Now, is it going to happen? That's out of my control. Can we will it into existence on this pod? Well, we're going to try. So to answer your question, Kyle, if it's up to me, hell yeah, they're trading for Kyle Tucker.
I love that energy.
Woo! Yes. Like it's nice to hear we're resonating with people, despite all those Astros fans who I was fighting with last week and basically just trolling back and couldn't pick up on any sarcasm, being the Astros fans that were receiving it. I am thrilled to hear that all our lovely, awesome Mariners fans are on board with the idea. Because why wouldn't you be? This is one of the best bats in the sport. You have a rotation that's deadly. You want to win it all? I'll tell you what, go and get in a bat like that. We'll do a lot. And like I said last week, if you want a fuller breakdown of this, you can go listen. But Kyle Tucker, not a Boris guy, no extension yet. Mariners haven't extended anybody else in-house. You're telling me with a year and a half left, you trade for Kyle Tucker? That isn't a guy that immediately as he gets in the door, you don't sit him down and say, tell us what money you want, we'll pay you. What do you want as an extension? Because I'm doing it. That's simple.
Yep, it is pretty simple, Lyle. We like all-star baseball players on our team.
Yeah, I mean, he's not just an all-star. That is one of the best bats in baseball. Like let's make that definitively clear. One of the best bats in baseball. So, yes, trade for Kyle Tucker. All right, we got one more. This is the last one, and this is on YouTube. It's from Jacob Mayer 7803. He says, if the playoffs were tomorrow, what would the best rotation and lineup look like for the Mariners, assuming full health?
We want to start off with this rotation. So in the rotation, I have in order Castillo, Kirby, Gilbert, Miller, and then Brian Woo's in the pen. Because in a playoff rotation, you only need 4 starters. Or if you're really going to stretch it, you only need 3. But I'm just going to say the Mariners would use 4 at this point because starting pitching is their strength. And they would go Castillo, Kirby, Gilbert, Miller. Brian Woo would be in the pen because we would imagine at that point he's going to be at his innings limit.
Right. So he may have a few innings left, but it may be best used if he's needed in long relief. As we've seen, sometimes starts can get cut short in the postseason and guys don't last as long. He may have to piggyback. They may just want to use him as a bullpen weapon. Imagine Brian Woo in the bullpen in the postseason. He could go 2-inning outings, even if it's a 1-inning outing. It's a pretty good arm to have back there. So, yeah, I'm with you. I had the exact same list down. Assuming they go 4 deep, I had it in that order too. Luis, George, Logan, Bryce Miller. But if they win 3, you'd probably see both Miller and Woo in the bullpen, and you'd go Luis, George, Logan.
Yeah. Yep. And again, we can argue over the semantics of who's best, but since Castillo's the veteran of the group and he's been pitching pretty well, he's getting the nod. And oh, by the way, he's also had the most playoff success on the team pitching, period. Mm-hmm. So that's why he gets the nod. The lineup is where it really gets interesting. If we want to put the best 9 players out there in a playoff lineup, just bear with me as I read out the lineup I have written down.
So can we clarify before you do?
Sure.
This is based off how guys are playing right now. It's too hard to predict what everybody's going to be looking like in October. If Jorge Polanco and Mitch Garver are back to their peak selves, this lineup could look different, but this is based off right now.
So here's the lineup. JP leads off, again, assuming full health. Julio bats second. Josh Rojas bats third. Cal Raleigh bats cleanup. Mitch Garver bats 5th. Jorge Polanco bats 6th. Dom Canzone bats 7th. Ty France bats 8th. And Luke Raley bats 9th.
Mm-hmm. That's what I have too. It's a little bit of a funky lineup, that's for sure. I don't know if Luke Raley is exactly your typical 9 hitter, but it is what makes most sense with the lineup. If Josh Rojas keeps hitting like this, that's not a 9 hitter. That's a guy you want getting a lot of at-bats. And if JP's going to go back to the leadoff spot, where does that leave Rojas? Well, you still got to hit him somewhat high. And if Polanco at the moment isn't really hitting the way we all expect him to hit, why not hit Rojas third?
Yeah. Yeah, it just sort of makes sense, too, and you push Garver down in the lineup and Cal in the cleanup spot. I mean, the lineup makes sense. And again, with all these players hitting well, you can look at every single player in this lineup and see plus. Like a plus, like either semi-plus or actual plus bat up and down. Especially like Ty France has been swinging it well lately the last week. The power's really come on, and he's hitting 8th, right? So like this is a lineup that can work. Like you said, it's funky, not pretty to look at. It might not be your overall best defensive lineup, but offensively, this is about as good as you got right now.
I agree. Let us know. As always, we always want to hear from you guys. So what would your lineup be? What would your rotation be? Drop it in the comments below. Or any of the other questions. If you have thoughts of your own, drop it in the comments. But especially with this one, because this one, you could jumble this a lot of different ways. So based on the production right now, how would you shuffle out the lineup if the playoffs were to start today? Let us know. Drop a comment below. Is our list good? Is it terrible? You can tell us.
Yeah, do that if you're watching on YouTube. If you're listening, go over to our YouTube, Marine Layer Podcast on YouTube, find the video, and leave us a comment underneath. We'd really appreciate that. Trying to get as much feedback as possible.
Yeah.
So
these mailbags are always fun. And I will say, if we didn't get to your questions, we've got a solution for you every single week. We go live 7 p.m. Sunday nights, 7 p.m. Pacific on YouTube and Instagram. And the whole point of us doing it is to take your guys' questions. We're there to hang out, talk some ball, and answer whatever questions you guys have. So if we didn't answer your question in the mailbag, come send it to us on the live stream. We will answer it there.
Let's get to Speak Your Mind. All right, Lyle, what is on your mind this week?
Man, I got to tell you, I don't know when the NFL schedule release became essentially a holiday, but it's become a holiday in the sports world. And it has incentivized social media teams to just be their most creative selves. I'll tell you, every team has started to just bring it in terms of the content they put out to release the schedule, and some of it just gets crazy. The Seahawks did a fine job with it. What did they do? They did, why am I blanking on it? The Seahawks were creative with what they did, but it's not like the Titans going around doing the fan interviews to release the schedule. Or, man, is there a better social media team out there than the LA Chargers? Those guys, I mean, they're a great social team to begin with, and people know that. They really bring it on these schedule releases, and they killed it with theirs. Let's put it like that.
And like the timely aspect of some of the things they put on there were remarkable. Remarkable how they probably spent weeks preparing this and timely managed to keep it updated literally until release date. Within hours of the release date is phenomenal content. But here's a sleeper one. Speaking of LA teams, do you see the Rams one? This is one I could not stop watching. I thought the Rams, as much as it pains me to gas up the Los Angeles Rams, they did a phenomenal job with theirs. They had JB Long sit down with Sean McVay, if you haven't seen the video, and they essentially did trivia where Sean McVay would answer a trivia question from every single one of their opponents, and they'd go in order throughout the entire season. It was so fascinating. It was like anything from like, what play call did you make on this game and this year against that team, or like tell me something about this team's history, or like rank your top 3 players on this team of all time, or something like that. It's like crazy stuff. Like Sean McVay has to have one of the he has to have like a 99th percentile brain.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
I guess I'm used to seeing him do that at this point, though. Maybe that's why I wasn't that surprised by it. But yes, it was very cool.
I'm too, but we don't get to see that as much. Really, like it was cool when he first was a head coach, and I remember Bleacher Report went there to the training camp, and they were quizzing him. And like we knew he had the brain like that, but the fact they sat down for like a 4-minute video of him just ripping through questions and showing off was remarkable.
Yeah, it was. The Seahawks, I was trying to remember what they did. I think they made like really, really in-depth cartoon drawings for each of their games. Does that sound right? I mean, I'm looking at it right here. I'm pretty sure that's what they did for each week is they were doing a bunch of like in-depth sketches for what the game was going to be. And it was certain characters for certain teams too. Like they made George Kittle, what's his name? Because George Kittle commented on the Seahawks post when they made him, what's his name? Stinky Pete or whatever it's called. And George Kittle commented, all right, that's fair. And so yeah, the Seahawks were good with theirs, but there's just some teams out there that are ultra creative with it. Yeah, like the Rams, like the Titans. The Titans one really went viral last year. The Texans a couple years ago did you ever play the backyard sports as a kid on the computer? Backyard football, backyard baseball. Yeah. So they did a backyard football pick a team like montage for the schedule. I want to say 2 years ago, and they had different players pop up and say a catchy line for each different game of the schedule. So yeah, teams get really creative with it. And yeah, shout out the Chargers. Maybe we should just say it like the Chargers putting Harrison Butker in the kitchen on their schedule was unreal. Like that went so viral so fast.
Again, like we're talking about the timely, like it was literally they had to fix it in 24 hours, less than that to put it in there, and it just so casually. It is absolutely remarkable. Like some of the ideas that they come up with, and that wasn't the only person they dragged in there. It was so funny.
They dragged Russ in there too. They dragged a bunch of people.
Yeah. So it was good stuff. But I will say, dog, if we're talking about the NFL teams this week, not every NFL team knocked whatever they were doing this week out of the park. My Speak Your Mind this week is the New York Giants. We just need to address the elephant in the room. The New York Giants released new jerseys today on Thursday. These might be the worst jerseys I've ever seen. These look like rugby uniforms, and the New York Giants will be wearing them this year. And I'm going to be honest, if they wore these on the field, I have no idea which team is playing.
They're really bad jerseys. And Daniel Jones wearing the jerseys was getting ripped apart too.
Wait, do you know what are they saluting with this? Do you know?
I didn't even see. I just thought they decided to have an alternate jersey and botched it miserably.
Century red commemorative uniform inspired by our history, built for today, was the Giants tweet. Man, they could have done literally anything else.
Not good.
The NFL doesn't really have a jersey problem. Like most of the jerseys are simple, and you know what teams are playing. Think of the craziest NFL jerseys. I'm thinking of like the Bumblebee uniforms for the Steelers. Those were kind of odd, but they still worked. They were the colors of the Steelers. You have the Color Rush unis, which were quirky, but at least every team had to wear them. No, this is a choice by the New York Giants. A choice to design these uniforms and wear them. And despite the fact that they're wearing gold pants, where's gold in the New York Giants color palette?
I don't know. Right? Not existent.
It's like the puke uniforms that the Buccaneers wear.
That was the other uniform I was thinking of. Those orange Bucks jerseys, right?
Yeah. Yep. What happened to just going back and wearing a classic uniform, like when the Dolphins do it with their old unis? They look great. Mm-hmm. I know the Giants have classic unis too, but just to mess it up to this extreme is remarkable.
Not good.
No, it's not.
Well, would you prefer the Giants jerseys that they just unveiled or the Fanatics jerseys in Major League Baseball this year?
Rather play naked.
Well, I don't know how to respond to that.
Well,
you got to pick
two pretty bad products.
I think
this is all natural.
I think I would go with the Fanatics jerseys. Those Giants jerseys are really bad.
Yeah. Well, at least the colors aren't messed up on the Fanatics jerseys. They got the colors right, I think. But not the Giants ones. And what are they doing with this helmet? It looks like it's like the Michigan Wolverines helmet, but it's red and blue instead. Where did that come from?
Yeah, they're going to have some questions to answer about this one.
Red is never a primary color on the uniforms, and yet these things are covered in red.
Yeah, I don't know. Not good. Not great, Giants.
No, it's not. And think of how much time they spent designing these uniforms. Just for as soon as they put it out in the public, people were like, yeah, this is dog shit.
Mm-hmm.
And you sit there and think, we spent months on this uniform.
That happens with teams sometimes. They'll release jerseys and they'll just get absolutely shredded. It happens.
And the NFL, I know they're just doing this to sell more jerseys, ultimately. It looks cool on TV once. You get more people to buy a bunch of jerseys, but, the only response I have to this is, this jersey would look really good at Coachella in, 5 years.
That's your default for every bad jersey, isn't it? Coachella.
Yeah, it's going to be a Coachella jersey because you just want something unique. And to Coachella's credit, colorful as well. You'll stand out in a crowd.
Right. It's true. Well, let's count and see how many of these Giants jerseys we see at Coachella next year.
Right, when you and I go.
Yeah,
do a podcast from there.
Yeah, that'd be quite a podcast.
Yeah.
Well, and we can count how many Giants jerseys we see. So
that sounds like a plan.
All right. That'll just about wrap it up for this edition of the Marine Layer podcast. You guys know the drill. If you want to listen to the full form podcast, you can do so wherever you get your audio pods. Make sure to download, leave us a 5-star review, leave a written review. It all helps us out. If you're watching on YouTube, like, comment, and subscribe, and then go check us out on social media where we're on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, and YouTube Shorts at Marine Layer Pod. That's TJ. I'm Lyle. As always, we thank you guys for tuning in. We'll talk to you soon.